time to check out a Stan Kraychik mystery, Book 5. Author, Grant Michaels. Publisher, St. Martin's Press, New York, 1996. Narrator, Eric Ost. Chapter 5. The O side was a huge waterfront resort on the east. That is the O for ocean side of town. After sunset on certain evenings, the massive elevated deck surrounding the O side swimming pool became an outdoor nightclub. Motel guests who wanted to swim during those times had to use the filtered lagoon on the property's beachfront. Yes, I said filtered. As I approached the club, I felt its music pulsing through the pavement. I followed the sound and vibration through a winding alleyway that provided parking for VIPs, judging by the cars parked there. The ground shaking throbs intensified at each new turn of the alley, and finally at the end I came upon the broad wooden stairway that led up to the deck. A sign at the foot of the stairs read, "Cozy Dinette," and the family-style meals sing their local hit, "Can't Remember Shit." At the top of the stairs, I viewed a writhing mass of bodies around the open pool, all moving to deafening sounds from a PA system that would have toppled the Colossus at Rhodes. Again, I wondered if this was off-season. Who were all these people? A young woman with a 4-inch bone through her nose was collecting the hefty cover charge. The shadow arc of the bone paralleled the upper rim of the wire-framed sunglasses she wore, even though Old Soul had long since plunged into the Gulf of Mexico. I had yelled to be heard above the insistent clamor of the music. I told her I was on the guest list, that my name was Boston, just as Cozy Dinette had told me to do that afternoon. "But what's your name?" the woman screeched irritably, causing the bone in her nose to twitch and slant from side to side. "Boston," I repeated. "I don't care where you're from," she said, as though I was just another parcel of the tourist scourge she obviously detested. I suppose I was, but then who was she with the bone in her nose? "I need your name," she said, "or else get out of line. You're holding everyone up." "Try Stan," I yelled. She pored over the guest list like a beady-eyed accountant, eager to find nothing, so she could then thrust her empty hand at me and collect the cash. "Stan the man," she muttered with a frown. "From Boston. C'est moi." "Go ahead," she said with enough acid to corrode galvanized zinc. To think Rafik was dead, while that woman was bestowing her special kind of hospitality on the world. My next challenge was to get a drink. I scanned the crowd and saw that 4 separate bars were open and busy, ensuring none of the patrons went thirsty. I snaked my way into the swarm around the nearest bar. Along the way, I heard snatches of various conversations, most of which centered on the scandalous death of Augusta Willitt at the Crow's Nest that morning. News traveled fast on the island reef. I tried to stand tall and remain calm above the fray, hoping that one of the bartenders might sense my peaceful energy through the noisy riot around me. It didn't work, but someone did nudge me from behind with a potent grab at my butt. "Oh, while you're at it, get me a vodka tonic." I turned to see myself reflected in the mirrored lenses of Joshua Ateen, who ran the Fleming Lemming with Laura Hope. "I'll pay you later," he said, then dissolved back into the crowd. I finally got the drinks, then dodged my way back through the crowd like a two-fisted drunk. Suddenly I felt stupid and alone, for I'd been set up, charmed to fetch Joshua's drink, and like a mindless lackey I'd done so, only to wonder the hostile throng to find him. It was a familiar situation to anyone who's ever been too submissive. In my emotionally vulnerable state, I'd lapsed back into it, doing good things for others without regard for myself. I had the urge to fling Joshua's drink high over the crowd and beyond the wooden fence that enclosed the deck. Let the bastard go fetch his own. But the crowd pressed against me too closely, and besides, I can't throw for shit. I squirmed my way to the fence and found a little nook to nestle into. where the music was somewhat baffled by the sheer body count around me. I sipped my own drink and looked out over the mass of people. Everyone seemed blissfully engaged in the frenzy of a party, while I was somehow removed from it. It was never my ideal of fun anyway, being crushed by a huge anonymous crowd with deafening noise all around. At least at the O side, I could enjoy the night sky overhead, so that's where I put my eyes for the next few minutes. Like special effects to accompany the music, lightning flashes leaped among the banks of clouds that were gathering offshore. I was gazing skyward when I heard someone say, "Mother Nature's light show." It was Joshua again. "No wonder you got lost. You've been stargazing." "I wasn't lost," I said. Joshua grabbed the vodka tonic from my hand. A few gulps later, order was restored. He flung the empty glass over the fence, then pulled 2 crumpled dollar bills from his back pocket. He regarded them mournfully. "Are you getting another drink?" "Not yet," I said. He jammed the money back in his pocket, and then lit a cigarette and let it dangle from his lips. He lifted his mirrored sunglasses and rested them in his thick, wavy black hair. The night air and the wild music seemed to complement his brutal charm. I asked him, "Where's your partner tonight?" "Laura? She never gets out to these things." "So you're here alone?" I said. Joshua smirked. "Not quite." He patted the small cellular phone attached to his belt. "I'm connected to the whole world." Then he whimpered, "I need another drink. Do you want one?" "Nah," I said. But when he left me, I grabbed my chance to escape the clutches of his charm. I wrestled my way through the crowd to another part of the deck. On the way, I did get myself another drink from one of the other bars, and also asked the barmaid if there was anywhere less crowded on the deck. She aimed me toward a thicket of young palm trees and elephant plants that looked like part of the motel's landscape, but was actually a secluded portion of the deck. By some miraculous aberration of architectural and acoustics, the area was almost completely out of earshot of the monstrous PA system that was shaking the rest of the deck. I peeked into the quiet little grove where a few patio tables and chairs had been set up. At one of the tables were seated Edsel Sham, Adolf Doberman, and a woman I hadn't seen before. I concealed myself within the shrubbery surrounding the quiet little area. All 3 people were putting away their cellular phones, as though concluding a round of Flash Gordon with their walkie-talkies. The woman stood up and prepared to leave the table. Her garment was a billowy expanse of gossamer silk voile, printed with large, soft-edged splotches of lavender, blue, and aqua, all muted tones, then accented with areas of gold and bright raspberry. The yards of soft fabric somewhat concealed her ampleness, and despite her size and mass, the woman moved with quiet grace, neither rustling the air around her, nor shaking the deck beneath her feet. As she passed, she glanced at me, and I tried to look like any other loiterer on the premises, but I could tell she had registered my face. Left alone, Edsel and Adolf lit cigarettes and smoked as if consummating a secret ritual. Edsel smoked deliberately, trying to absorb every molecule of tar and nicotine contained in the heavy drag, while Adolf puffed and exhaled skittishly, barely letting the smoke touch the back of his tongue. Still trying to conceal myself in the darkness and the foliage, I moved close enough to hear Doberman say, "My business is complete, so to Germany I will soon return." That's when Edsel noticed me and said loudly, "Hey there, Stan, you look lost." Doberman turned toward me and said, "Hello there, my partner in crime." He laughed as though he'd made a joke. "Come and join us," said Edsel. "I don't want to interrupt anything," I said. "We've just finished," he said. As I pulled out a chair to sit, Adolf Doberman extinguished his cigarette and stood up. He said to Edsel, "I shall tomorrow confirm with you the arrangements we have tonight made here." Edsel replied, "I'll be home all morning, working on the pilot for that new series." And then Doberman turned to me and said, "I do not know when our paths again shall cross, so I will say now, auf Wiedersehen." He shook my hand, and Edsel's and left us quickly. But through the same greenery and that hadn't quite concealed me, I saw Adolf Doberman stop and make a call from his cell phone. Next thing I knew, Edsel was offering me a cigarette, which I refused. Never could manage the act without coughing. Then he said, "I hope you enjoy my book." "It's interesting," I lied. He laughed. The critics didn't like it either, but the public did. Even my publisher couldn't hide the sales figures on that one. Only the dead know. Just put a brand new swimming pool in my backyard. Do you swim, Stan? "I'm a sinker," I said. "Well, mine is a lap pool. Only 4.5 feet deep. You ought to come by sometime." "I've heard you can drown in a bathtub." "Only if you're not careful," he said. "I keep a rubber ducky close by." "Well, that's a wise precaution for some people." Edsel extinguished his cigarette with meticulous care, a gesture Nicole would have appreciated. "Looks as though the rain's about to break," he said. "I'd offer you a lift, but I don't drive." "That's okay," I said. "I came to hear Cozy Dinette." Edsel made a contemptuous little sound. "She'll probably be rained out. Have you ever been in a tropical downpour?" I told him no, and he laughed. "Well, if you get caught in it," he said, "just surrender. There's no use trying to stay dry." Then he departed and left me sitting alone. I stayed like that a while, alone, not thinking of anything, just being. The music was almost distant enough to become a mantra of its own. Then just about the time I started getting bored with being, the first heavy droplets of rain began to plop here and there on the wooden deck. Then came a roll of thunder that outwitted even the O-Side's behemoth sound system. As the rain gradually increased, the music faded quickly, followed by an announcement that Cozy Dinette's show would be postponed, and to all a good night. Suddenly, people were running for their cars or for taxicabs. There was absolutely no shelter from the rain on the pool deck. I watched the crowd, which seemed to know exactly where it was going, and I quickly realized that its synchronized flight was a conditional response. I hadn't yet learned. I stood observing instead of participating in the panic to escape the imminent downpour. I recalled Edsel Sham's advice, which mirrored one of my own private mantras: when nothing else will do, surrender. I told myself, surrender to the rain. The crowd quickly vacated the pier and the pool deck, while I walked with a deliberate but relaxed stride. The rain was heavy, but my saturation had just begun, and the wetness was refreshing. Joshua, 18, stood under an awning at the end of the convoluted alleyway where it met the street. A damp, unlit cigarette hung from his lips. "Do you have any money?" he said. "I forgot to charge my phone battery, and my ride left without me." I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was those mirrored sunglasses and the heavy rain and his dark, wet hair. So, what if he was straight? Sexy is sexy. I reached into my pocket almost reflexively and gave him whatever bills were there. The steady, rushing sound of the rain had put me in some kind of trance, or else my surrendering mantra had. Or Joshua had. But I didn't care about anything anymore, least of all the paper change in my pockets. He hailed the last free taxicab on Key West that night, while I surrendered to walking all the way back to the Jared Ballami House. It took only a few more minutes of exposure for the pelting water to drench my clothes, then stream down my legs and fill my sneakers. After that, it was easy because I just couldn't get any wetter. Even when cars and taxicabs drove by and splashed me, none of it mattered. I was in another world where everything was simply wet, wetter, wettest. Meanwhile, the lightning glared so harshly, so blue-white, that I had to squint, and that the thunder followed, dwarfing my memory of the O-Side's PA system to the tiny buzz of a transistor radio. The ground shook violently, and my whole body bounced upward like a pea on a drumhead. It was man against the raging elements, wind and rain and lightning and thunder. I suppressed an urge to cry out, "Heathcliff!" Anyway, I had no audience. By the time I waded to Fleming Street, the crisis of the storm had passed, and the sound and fury had diminished somewhat, though the rain was still falling steadily. On the last soggy stretch of my walk home, I sensed a car trailing slightly behind me. It followed for half a block before I turned back and glanced at it. It was a taxicab, and a brief flash of lightning showed it to be one of those big pink ones endemic to Key West. In all the rain, perhaps driver and passenger were having trouble finding their destination, but midway up the next block, it was still following me. I stopped and turned and faced the cab again. It stopped too, but the glare of headlights and the densely tinted windows prevented me from seeing inside. Even the lightning flashes gave no clue to the cab's occupants. We stayed like that a while, me and a big pink taxicab at a peculiar impasse, its windshield wipers going flop, 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 like an unwavering automatic heartbeat. Then the driver punched the pedal and the car squealed off into the black night rain. At the Jared Ballami House, I stopped on the porch and let most of the water run off me. And then I got up to my room, stripped down, dried off, and went to bed. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.